On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we're bringing on Lance Pitlick. Lance runs onlinehockeytraining.com. Also had a successful playing career himself in the NHL and played for the Gophers. And both of his sons have gone on to some nice careers and are continue to have some right now. It's got to be nice having at least one boy back in his home state.
Yeah, no, actually, both of them are here. My youngest plays for the University of Minnesota. He's a freshman playing there. And my oldest plays for the Minnesota Wild. Then I got a nephew that plays in Calgary for the Flames. And I also have a niece that plays locally here, Division I at St. Thomas University. So we got a few Pitlicks out into the old hockey world recently, so it's been fun. A lot of time still watching hockey.
Yeah, it's awesome to have family close. Has to be absolutely amazing. So I'm curious, talking about family, what do you think it is about maybe Minnesota or the Pitlick family that grows professional hockey players, it seems like, on trees?
Well, I wouldn't say that they're on trees, but we've had my older brother and our kids have they gravitated toward the sport. And in Minnesota, much like Canada, if you don't play hockey, you're the weirdo, because everyone plays hockey in Canada and Minnesota. So I think that helped. But because I had played at a pretty high level, obviously, that and you see a lot of former NHL players kind of, a little before me, a little after me, that their kids now are playing in the NHL. Kachucks, Domies, the list goes, it's a pretty big list. So I think we know what it takes to, kind of travel that path. And I think we can get the kids in front of the right people earlier if that path is there, or that passion is there. Because if it's not there, then it's not going to work. And then it's about really just all of the things that they do in addition to their team practices and games. That's what's going to propel them to those higher levels. So it's a journey, but there's an enormous amount of work, and the only people that can put that in is the athletes or the person chasing whatever it is they're chasing. They can get all the information, but if you don't have action and a pretty consistent, strict routine, they're not going to get there.
So you mentioned knowing what it takes, and I feel like everyone kind of has an idea of what it takes, but I'm assuming you have the true behind the curtain. What does it truly take? Maybe you can illuminate for our audience here, what does that truly mean, or what are some serious key elements that people maybe aren't thinking about or wouldn't understand or do need to understand if you want to chase this dream?
Yeah, well, I doubt many of your subscribers or listeners know that I didn't play my first NHL game until I was 27 years old. So I was a late one, and that doesn't happen very often. Once you're labeled a career minor leaguer, it's hard to get that break. So I think that helped me in kind of keeping the faith and being able to pass on that message, not only to my kids, but to the players that I've coached and trained over the years. The University of Minnesota, they were the only school that offered me a scholarship. I never went on a recruiting visit anywhere else. I never had another conversation with another school. They offered me a half a scholarship, and I said to play hockey and go to school right down the street. All right, I'll do that. So I don't know if I wasn't very smart or just was really, really passionate. I think a little combination of both. And that kind of, those experiences that you go through, those tough ones where you have to have full commitment for a long period of time. It's easy to tell that message to others that have that same goal, set on their horizon.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned was there's going to be bumps in the road. That's almost a guarantee, unless your name's Connor McDavid. And even then, broken wrist and some different things. Everyone has their own bumps. But for us mere mortals, and the majority of us hockey players out there really scratching and clawing to stay in the game and play at the highest level possible, there's going to be a lot of setbacks. Do you have any examples that stick out in your mind of something that you push through? Maybe you've got one where maybe you didn't handle it the right way, and then you've got another one where you handled it the right way. It really helped you push forward.
Well, another thing most people don't know is that I was probably a healthy scratch or injured the same amount of games that I played. So that takes me over 1,200 games, being around. So I can tell you pretty much what rink has the best chicken fingers and chocolate chip cookies in the AHL, because I spent a lot of time out there. But I've had 8 surgeries, and a lot of little injuries that kept me out. Groin pulls, hamstring pulls, things where it'd be so flared up, you'd have to get it injected to calm it down because nothing else is working. And then the rehab, that's the toughest part when you get later in your career. Because when I was playing in Ottawa, I ended up having to have hip surgery, and it's tough to climb that ladder. When you get knocked down after an injury, to keep climbing back up. Probably the toughest one, to answer your question, is in '92. I was on the Olympic team tour with Team USA, and that's when the year Eric Lindros, his first year on that tour, and him and I just had battles. But anyways, I don't know if I would have made the final team, but a month before the Olympics, it was right after Christmas. It was, we're getting pretty close, where I broke my leg in practice, and I couldn't go to the Olympics. That's when I was playing in Hershey. They weren't using NHL guys. They were using AHL or college guys. And so that was a big disappointment. So I went home and, rehab that, went back to Hershey. My first game back, I did fall down and my knees went out beside me and I just shredded my groins like the first game. So I'm back on the shelf again. And so, there's this, it's part of you're going to score, you're going to miss. And we just keep on shooting, fall down, we keep getting up, and until your body or your desire says that's it. So I was just so grateful for the career that I had, and the people that I was able to meet along the way, to play with, and to be amazed at the ones that I played against. So it's great how fun the sport is, and love that we live in Minnesota, love that the NHL is here, and we're right next to Canada.
Seems cold.
Well, where are you located?
Columbus, Ohio.
Oh yeah, you're a little south. Yeah. Okay. Well, for some reason I think you're Canadian. Maybe just because you guys got really good content.
Maybe I'll take that as a compliment. I mean, the Canadians do a
Yeah.
nice job here, but I do some stuff with USA Hockey, so I'm not sure that they'd be happy to hear that.
All right, you can just edit that out of the old podcast.
No, it's all good. We leave all the good stuff in. Doesn't matter what it is. But I want to dive into maybe some technicals, because obviously you're focusing right now on training hockey players. And I think, if I remember correctly, stick handling is one of your expertise.
That's my area of focus, is stick skill development, stick handling, passing, shooting. And all of my work is done off the ice, in your garage, basement, or backyard. I don't know if anyone has a bigger database, but I have a database of off ice drills that just exceeds 1,200 now, and they're organized into individual progressive practice plans or training modules that players can access. They watch a short video where I'll give them an explanation with a demonstration. They go try it for a few minutes, come back, get the next drill, and then move on. So that's what I've developed. But my primary business where I'm in front of kids is I do private 1 or 2 players at a time lessons, off ice stick skills lessons at my house. So they'll come over, I'll give them a workout for an hour with, basically working the program, testing maybe some new drills that I'm experimenting with. And then if there's something that they want to work on in preparation for their next game, we'll spend a few minutes on that. So hockey's a huge part of my life still to this day. But what's awesome is that I actually train more female players than I do male now. And it's been like that for about 3-4 years. But almost all the players that I train, I never have seen them skate like for years. But because they just come over and wearing tennis shoes, and unless they're on TV or something, I never see them play. But I can tell that they're good by what they can do in my little world. So, and I've gained a knowledge that I don't think many people have, and that's to take pretty much any age player. I mean, I don't train anyone under, 6 is about the youngest I'll go. And they have to be, the mom and dad have to convince me that, he's got the attention span, but all the way up to players that are playing in the NHL. And I can challenge the really gifted, the ones that have put a lot of work in, and then I can take this kid that hasn't really held a stick much and move him from A to B pretty quickly. And if they buy into starting to do a little more organized training at home following my online program, the progress is pretty remarkable.
So what are some of the keys to great stick handlers? Like, what on a technical base do great stick handlers do that separate themselves from the average, or maybe someone who's beginning? How can they elevate themselves? What kind of techniques are they having, stiff upper hands where they're really hard on the stick with a soft lower hand? Are they rolling the puck out the back? What does that look like?
For me, when I get a player over for the first time, there's up to 9 corrections that I make in hand positioning, the movement of each hand, and then where they dribble on the stick blade. So that can tell me a lot. And one of the biggest ones, and this is when they're dribbling in front of the body. That's it. Okay. I can tell all of the things from that. So the biggest key is where their top hand is positioned in relationship to their body, because I get a lot that come over. The correction is called top hand hip lock, where their top hand is outside of their hip, outside of the body, outside of the hip. And that's an adjustment that I make. So I push their top hand. So if they're a left-hander, I'll push their top hand so it's out in front of their left hip flexor, let's say. And there'll be room for you to fan your other hand in between your top hand and your body. So there's a little bit of a gap, because I got to get them used to that top hand moving side to side, not the stick blade going side to side, because, the chop, because that top hand's outside the body. And then once we get that, and for a lot of players, if I have to make that adjustment, the ball or puck seems like it's a mile away from them now. It's so far out away from their body. The other one would be what's going on with their bottom hand. That should be a loose grip when we're dribbling. And it'll be sliding up and down the shaft based on where it's in relationship to our body. And then the other is where they're dribbling on the stick blade. I'll have a lot of players dribble in the middle of the blade or towards the toe. I tell players to think of the stick blade as a bike. The toe of the blade is the front wheel. The heel is the back wheel. The toe of the blade when dribbling the bike should be popping a wheelie. So the toe should be up in the air. and the heel should be tapping into the ground, and that's where we have the most control coming up the ice, is, you know, towards the heel of the blade. So there's a lot more things when it comes to shooting. I guess there's not one thing that, you know, I can do that will change everything. But in most cases, you ask, how do these really good players get really good? They have a stick in their hand way more than the average, like way more, and a puck on their stick. And a lot of times, many of those hours are not on a rink on skates. It's in an off-ice environment, because the hockey gods can't tell if you take 100 shots on the ice or 100 off the ice. They just count as a rep. And what most people don't understand is that in order to go from average to above average, just to get to that first shelf, excuse me, you require a ton of misses. Like, you are going to miss way more than you make for a long time, months. And then all of a sudden there's going to be a shift. So ask me the question, Greg, how do you know this, Lance?
How do you know this, Lance?
So in my quest of, you know, trying to develop content and a program, I wanted to get into a young player's head, like at the beginning. Like, what did it feel like when you first started playing hockey and you had a stick in your hand and you're trying to skate and handle a puck? So I'm like, well, why don't I teach myself opposite hand? I mean, I wasn't very skilled as a regular hand guy, but let's try opposite hand. So, you know, you can't, do you know if you can play opposite hand, play the piano opposite hand? Could you do that? I don't think you can. But
I don't
hockey,
know piano at all, so you're gonna have to fill me in on this one. But I've experimented with stick handling and shooting opposite hand a few times myself, and it definitely helps when you go back to your correct handedness, just because you're literally breaking down everything, and especially with the top hand, you really get it away from your body.
yeah, it shows you a lot. So I just said I'm gonna do it, and let's for a while and see what happens. So I budgeted 3 to 4 hours a week just to go down in my space and work my program opposite hand. And I did that in the first couple weeks. You know, it was clumsy, it was slow, didn't feel good, because I don't like doing things that I'm not very good at. But I kept going. And what was interesting was that halfway through the third month is when the big shift happened. And I was like, holy cow, coach has got some opposite hand mojo now. So I know if a kid just commits around 3 months, couple hours a week, consistently, that if they can make it to that third month, that they're going to get to a different level. And when you get up there, you see things differently than you did before, you know, because now you know how to get better by putting in a little extra effort. And this is just in my sector. You know, you can get really good with a stick and a puck at home, and, you know, complimenting going on the ice. You still got to do the technical skating. You know, when you get to the certain age where strength and conditioning comes into play, you got that. You got your hockey IQ people. Nutrition has to be, you know, something that you pay attention to. So you need an army of people to get you along this journey, and it's all about getting in front of the right people by the time you get to the place you want to be.
Yeah, and talking about getting in front of the right people, you talked about your sons making sure that they're in front of the right people as they're going through the ranks. I'm curious, one, what the right people are. Obviously, some of that's going to be what you just talked on, but also maybe like the timeline. When do we need to start having these things in place? When do we need to start talking about these things with our players? And what time do they maybe miss the boat if they haven't hit it by then?
You know what? I think that parents very quickly know if they have one that's got the bug, has got the hockey bug, because it'll be a constant bugging, like, mom, you know, I want to do this, bring me over here, I want to do that. I think where the problem is where the parent wants it a little more than the kid, and then you start forcing things on. But for me, like I said, I get some kids that come here as young as 6 years old, and they're super passionate about it, and I can't tell that they're that young because of how good they are. But I think that every person, every coach that's out there should know where their ceiling is. I know where my ceiling is, and I found out that because my boys have been working with Adam Oates and for a few years, and I went down and watched him training the group and went out to lunch, and I knew where my ceiling was with that guy. But with that being said, I can't do what he does. Don't want to do it. I can't do it because I didn't experience it. But he needs guys like me and gals that can get a player to a certain level where they can accept what the Belfries and the Oateses are teaching these players. Because if you don't have confidence, the confidence with the puck where you can maneuver around the ice with your eyes up more than they are down, working with Belfry or any of those guys isn't really going to help. You have to get that. It has to be such an extension of your hands. I think Oates said it. I think that's where the first time I said it, but he said the hockey stick and the puck are as important to a hockey player as the cane is to someone who has lost their vision, how they navigate around. We're lucky we get the eyes, and we should use them once in a while, but we should think like a blind person and start feeling and hearing those beacons that are out there, but we just don't notice them because not many people have taught us how to do that.
So what are some of those beacons? What are some of those cues and things that players should be attuning themselves towards?
So what I have players do is I'll have them dribble, either in the forehand side or in front, wherever, and then I'll have them close their eyes, and then I'll ask them to listen. I don't do any lessons without tunes on, but most of the time I'll turn the tunes down or off completely so they can hear it. And then I'll have them dribble, try to move the puck more towards the toe as they're doing this. And their eyes are still closed. And then see if they can tell the difference between what it feels like at the toe towards the heel. Because anytime a ball or puck hits your stick blade, it sends a vibration up the shaft of the stick to your hands to tell you where it is on the blade. The vibration's weaker towards the toe, stronger towards the heel. So that vibration, that beacon is stronger, a stronger signal when we're from the mid to heel opposed to mid to toe.
That's really cool. And you mentioned Adam Oates, and he's working with some of the best players in the world. You'll have to get him on the podcast here at some point. But before that,
Have you had him? Have you had him as a guest?
No, I'd love to have him on as a guest, though. I think he'd be a wonderful person to have on and talk about all this kind of stuff, because he was a truly cerebral player who was an unbelievable playmaker. And I think he thinks about the game differently than most, which I think is absolutely fascinating. I'm wondering what your experiences have been from him or things you've learned from him.
Very little. My kids are at the age where they're on their own journey, and as much as I'd like to really dive into everything that he's doing and what he's teaching all these players, I've been focusing on my stuff, and it's been a huge learning curve for me just to stay on top of what I've been doing. But eventually I am going to get to it, because I'm starting to chip away at things where once I do, I'll gain a little more time back. But I will say this, he is one of the greatest hockey minds I have ever spoke to. He's an amazing person. I think everyone in the world should meet him once, because he's as unique as they come. But man, did I learn a lot, and was inspired to be just a little bit better.
Yeah, shed some light onto what you've learned. I'm curious, and I feel like everyone else is going to be asking the same question as they're listening to this episode.
I don't know if I no. I asked him if I the one time before I left him, I said, Adam, I'm in front of kids every week. I mean, boys, girls, really good, just at the beginning of the journey. I said, if there's one thing I could tell them from Adam Oates, what would it be? He said, you can't do enough work on the backhand. So and it's interesting that he said that, because that's what I've been preaching for years, since I've been doing this, that if you care about your forehand more than your backhand, or an equally amount, you're going to be completely different, because most players, they for some reason don't practice on it enough, and there's still coaches today that are instructing players to keep the puck off the backhand in games, but during practices, they do absolutely nothing to develop that backhand. Like, let's have a practice where every drill, you can only make passes on the backhand. Is that going to hurt anyone? So I'm pretty passionate about the backhand, that same thing. I want players to become mega learners and to care about their backhand way more than they do now. So there's your Adam Oates little tidbit.
So obviously you're passionate about the backhand. I'm curious as to why you're so passionate about it. Obviously you can open your range and have more options, but are there benefits beyond just that?
I guess if you want to be average, then yeah, don't worry about it. Just do whatever comes natural. But if you want to have a chance to, to play on the top teams in your area, to go on to play in the USHL or the North American League, to play college hockey, you have to have a really good backhand, because that's a puzzle piece that's on the table. And guess what? There are a lot of people all over, a lot of players all over the world that you're going to be competing against that have a wicked backhand. So it's your choice. You want to try to compete with the top players? What are they doing? If you don't, then you know what you're going to get. Probably average.
So when you're developing your backhand over forehand, is it just repetition of doing passes and shots, or is there a specific way, especially with that large library you have, that you like to attack working on a backhand or building up someone's backhand? Because obviously it's a key piece. I mean, Crosby's got almost a straight stick because he values it so much, and I believe Oates is very similar as well. What are the key pieces into this?
Well, people think it's just the shooting. I mean, it's the passing. I mean, it's keeping the puck in your possession. And a lot of times it requires a backhand pass. And if you can't, you turn it over, you're playing on defense. So that's huge. In tight, there's the technique is pretty similar as far as what happens. And once you get it, it's just trying to perfect it. But whatever the drill is, if I'm doing something, if I'm 15 feet out and I'm taking forehand shots, I'm going to do the same thing on the backhand, the same amount of reps. So that's how my program works. Whatever we do on the forehand, there's going to be a backhand equivalent. And then also I've added, once they get into the main part of the program, an opposite hand drill or two. So, they're getting those new brain connections being made on the opposite side of the brain. And like you said, there's nothing better than when you go from opposite hand back to regular hand. And what's interesting is when I was filming the program, there would be times where I'd get stuck and I couldn't, there's some drills where I got to shoot 4 or 6 pucks in a row in succession. and I don't like to miss. So I'll sit there and go until I'll get 6 in a row or whatever it is, and I'll get stuck. And if that happens, I'll rest for a minute, and then I'll do the drill, a couple minutes opposite hand, and then go back to regular hand. And every single time I get it. So that's a teaching thing that I do with players, that if they get stuck on something, they're getting frustrated. All right, let's do it opposite hand a little bit here. And then we go back, and then things smooth out, or they usually get it. So there's another little golden nugget for people to try.
That's what we're looking for. A lot of good nuggets here, and as small of time as possible, right? We're value guys. So I actually hope a few of my ex-players are listening to this, because they always thought I was crazy whenever we would stick handle opposite handedness towards the end of our stick handling progressions. And then I'd finally have them go back. They're like, oh, this is great. But like, if you do it enough, like, they just don't see it. And it's amazing how fast it occurs, even if they suck at their opposite handedness, how much it improves their normal handedness. And they always thought I was crazy, but you've experienced the exact same thing of how powerful that little trick is.
Yeah, we're weirdos, you and I. So that's good. It's interesting, when I started doing it, maybe like in the summer, that's where I'm really busy, because all my college players are, the ones that I've been working with a long time. So one summer I introduced it, like every lesson we're gonna do an opposite hand drill, and especially my boys, they're like, no effing way, this is stupid. And but what was interesting is, by the end of the summer, that was part of one of the parts of the lesson that they really looked forward to doing, because the improvement was so huge from the beginning. And there's a time in everyone's life where I hope, where we start to understand the benefits of self-improving, not only physically, but reading, listening to podcasts and stuff like that. So that's what I want the people that I get in front of to, really aspire to just learn more. It's cool to accomplish things. I mean, I'm 54 years old, and I can do some pretty cool stuff with the stick now, and that I just learned, in the last 2 months. So don't give up on learning new things, because it's what keeps us young.
Absolutely. For forever learning. And, I think that every single coach is better the 2 years after they stop playing and they start coaching, from all that study, all the new things they're trying to teach. And if we can get our players to maybe try to teach at a young age, or be on that learning curve earlier, figuring out how to become their own best coach, it's super powerful. And to your point about rewiring your brain, try brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. Like, that's just a great little place to go in and see how awkward it is, but then how easy it is. So I think this could go a very curious way. I'd love to get a psychologist on sometime to talk further about that. But I'd like to continue.
Hold it. Let me I got something I want to say to you. First, on the brushing the teeth, I've been a both hander for probably 5 years now. I made that switch a long time ago, but thank you. And it's cool, because if I get my one hand, if you got a little injury or something, you're still good. So there's a guy in Minnesota. He writes for the Let's Play Hockey paper. His name's Jack Blatherwick. He was our strength and conditioning coach when I was at the University of Minnesota. Brilliant man. Never was married. Just a servant. It just helps players. And I ran into him and asked him about, what are the benefits of opposite hand? He's got, like, I don't know, 10 PhDs. I mean, just brilliant man. What are the benefits of it? And he said, interesting to say this. This is a few years ago. He says there's a number of studies going on around the world, and he actually tutored me at the University of Minnesota for college algebra, because I told you that military time doesn't make sense to me. I still don't know how to read a tape measure. and college algebra didn't make any sense to me. So he tutored me, and he's just like, Lance, you got 3 girls over here and there's 16 beers here. And, he's making all these to try to make it so I could understand. So I'm asking about this opposite hand, and he remembers, and he goes, all I know, Lance, is that if you're a right-hander, there's going to be one side of your brain that is going to be populated with all your hockey stuff. And he said, if you start learning stuff opposite hand, then the other side of the brain is going to start having some population going on. And then those two are going to intermingle. And I don't see how that can be bad for anyone. So nugget
awesome.
number 3, is that nugget number 3 I just gave you?
I think we're way beyond that. I think you need to stop counting and just let them happen and let them flow.
All right.
Get in that flow state that we all aspire to.
Yes.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about going from the NHL to this coaching and how you're continuing to learn. And it seems like you've had some struggles. And maybe you found, and I'm curious if you have found that, like, just because you played in the NHL, NCAA, a high level hockey, that it doesn't exactly mean you're a good coach. Like you need to put in the work, and there's a lot of things that go into coaching that you just flat out didn't see or didn't think of. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Oh man. Yeah. I was, if you play in the NHL and you have a kid that wants to play hockey, you do not have a choice. You have to coach. And I didn't want to embarrass myself. So, I did all the certification classes, and where I really got lucky is the first 2 groups my oldest was associated with had coaches that were just amazing mentors to me. This Mike coach, the very beginning, he just came right up to me and he said, Lance, I know you played in the NHL. He said, I've never played past, like peewees. He says, but I own this age group. I can't go anywhere past this age group, but this age group, I'm great, and I'd love to share what I've learned. And he did. His name is Dave Rotman. Another guy was Mark Kowalski. So yeah, I was lucky. And then that happened. I learned how to be just in the moment when you're on the ice, which you have to be with 4 and 5-year-olds, because you have to be so energetic, and then just the enthusiasm. So I guess that just kind of fanned the learning flame, because now you're doing it for others. And I started because I didn't want to embarrass myself. I ended with trying to help others. And so that's what I just did. But the challenge back then was there wasn't YouTube yet, like it is today. There was an Instagram. So your places to learn were books and DVDs, movies, if you went to seminars and stuff, in-person meetings. So it was a little more, took a little more time to learn. But yeah, I just really became a student of the game. And I hope that if people would think of me, as a coach, that, they know that I came prepared every time, and with the best intentions, with their long-term development in mind.
Talking about videos and DVDs, I was a big Sean Skinner guy growing up, so I can talk on that subject all day long. I remember going to the rink in the old minivan and the old DVD players, which I don't even think they make DVD players anymore. They're like old relics. But I remember watching those and just getting so passionate about going to the rink and playing. And now there's a lot of resources. Obviously, we're trying to do good stuff with the podcast, newsletter, and even I'm on Twitter, rambling way more than I probably should be. But it's amazing how the times have changed. I'm curious, and it might be a little far-fetched from your memory, but what was that like going from being an NHL player Like, did you have that moment where like, yeah, I've been here before, I know my way around a rink? Or did you start very humble in your background, like, I'm an idiot when it comes to coaching? Because I've come across both. And it's very interesting to see how different people approach the situation.
No, I was scared, much like when I played in the NHL. I was scared every game, every practice. Yeah, no, that's what really fueled me, and also just to not embarrass myself. But once you start understanding, kind of the process, your process of acquiring information, and then I think that I was pretty good at practice planning over time, where we optimized the ice pretty good. And then, I expected a lot out of my assistant coaches. They weren't just cone pushers. They were given something to specialize in for the season, and that's what their focus was, to bring to the kids week after week. So, again, I I put a lot of time in, like a lot of other people, but it was others that helped me along the way, early on, that really kind of got me pushed in the right direction, to where at one point it was a shove that is like, go, you're different now, where, I don't do much now. It's high, I in my space here, Greg, I've created a space where people come here, they pay me money, and I know more than everyone that ever comes there. Uh, so why would I want to be in that space and to be able, and they want to know what I know. So I just got to tell them and show them, and then they're here for an hour and then the next group. So if the lessons that I do that are the most impactful for me now are the first lesson when I get in front of a kid, because I can change their trajectory, and that's impactful. So I wouldn't have to go on vacation, because I'm in paradise right here most days.
That's awesome. And I'm curious, continue to go down the coaching path just a little bit more here, of maybe some coaches, like Dave and like Jack, that you enjoyed, but maybe there were some anti-mentors out there. So maybe some coaches that you're like, I'm never going to do anything like this guy.
Oh yeah, that be at the NHL, and I'll give you one example, and it'd be Mike Keenan. I can expand on it. He was very challenging, and I learned so much from him that I would never ever introduce or bring to someone else. Didn't understand his coaching style. I don't know how a person lives like that, knowing intentionally how he's making people feel. So yeah, I didn't want to be like that guy. I have some regrets coaching, more so where, not giving some players an opportunity and giving others more of an opportunity. But that was a short-lived deal. I learned from it, and that didn't happen again. So yeah, it's a journey, and the one thing about it is, much like getting good, we're going to make a ton of mistakes, we're going to fall a lot, and the same thing happens when you get to a coach. You're going to bring a drill to practice, and it's going to suck. You got to keep on bringing the drills, to the practice, and showing the kids that you're putting in the work, and you love them, and that's your focus, is to help them get as good as they can.
Everyone is an example, whether it be good or bad. And I think that's a great message for all players, because maybe you're not going to love every coach you play for. You won't always agree with every coach or every person you come across in life. So that's a great point. So just kind of starting to wrap this up a little bit. I'm curious of maybe some epiphanies you've had during your journey here. So obviously you're a lifelong learner. And like I said, I want to pack as much value into this as possible. What are some of those epiphanies or some big things that you've come across that you're like, this is really powerful, this is really cool?
You know, from what I specialize in, I mentioned the one that I know that if a kid hasn't done much off ice stick skills training, other than just taking a pile of pucks away from the net, that in roughly 3 months, I can get them to a much higher level. And I guess for me, it's for a lot of parents, when you go into something to specialize, there's a point in time, if you're around it enough, that you'll get to a point where you kind of know that you've gained some knowledge that most can't get unless they put in the same amount of hours, and not many people are willing to do that. So I now can confidently say that in an off-ice environment regarding stick skills, I'm a master coach. And that's not bragging. That's an earned feeling. So I want to share that with people, because when they come over, parents tell me all the time, just they can't believe how technical everything is. And I just tell them, I said, yeah, it's technical to most people, but it's not to me. I see things now that I didn't even see 6 months ago. And it's cool. And much like a lot of these, there's one movie where it was a baseball movie, and the guy heard the pitch, he didn't see it, and he looks up and said, "Ooh, that was a good one." I can listen to a kid shoot, not have to see him, and I can, I know if they are shooting correctly or they're not. But there's never a quick fix for anything. And, all of those little messages I try to, pass on to others, because, there's a lot of this stuff that is hard to find the answers. And even if you find the answers, you still need someone to help teach it to you.
Absolutely. Like, you can teach yourself to a point, but at some point, the mentor knows the path a little bit better, or has that key piece of information. I think that's super true, is finding a good mentor in some shape or form to help you along the path. And you mentioned it earlier with your sons, finding the right people to get them where they need to be. And that's so powerful. And I'm trying to remember the movie, what it was. I think it was like Kingpin or something like that. And there was a bowling movie. And I remember one of the scenes, this guy's like, "Hey, that was some kind of shot." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard it. Like, I knew that was a split, and you're totally screwed." Like, something like that. Like,
Yeah.
quite something. So it's amazing where you get to as you coach. And I'm curious. I mean, you're clearly experienced. You're master coach in this. What's something in the last 6 months that you learned? Or that piece that you just were talking about, where you learned something new, or now you're looking at something completely different.
No, well, I gave up drinking for 111 days. So I didn't know that I had that. It doesn't matter, I mean, what it is. I'm trying to get players to, commit to doing something for 30 days, like not like a few times in 30 days, but put a little time in every day for 30 days. And I did that, but in doing so, I also accomplished in that same time period some other things, some film stuff, learning about these podcasts, how to produce it and distribute it and stuff like that. But I did a lot of heavy lifting last winter and spring with my online hockey training program and our new kind of website and messaging. So I emptied the tank there. So now I'm kind of just taking a break, and now I'm going to focus more on hearing other people's stories as I'm starting a podcast in a few weeks in the new year.
Exciting times, I gotta say. It was for me when I started, and upgrading to a new mic and all that fun stuff. So it's quite fun, the journey and the people you're talking with. So I'm excited for that to come out, and eventually, hopefully, be on there as a guest as well. There's just not enough good quality content out there for people to find on this stuff.
Well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and happy holidays.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. So before we let you go, though, we'd like to remind you to please like our podcast, subscribe to it, give us a follow, and share this with all the hockey people in your life. We really appreciate growing this community, this podcast. Remember, we also have a newsletter, the Hockey IQ newsletter as well. Really excited to continue to grow this. So please help us grow this further by liking, subscribing, following, and sharing with everyone. So appreciate you all. Take care.